And so I just went through there and I literally wrote, remember pre-internet, no email or websites at this point. I just wrote letters to all 50 and just had them send me brochures. And then there was one that really stood out who had just built a brand new facility, $1 million or $20 million, I don't know what it was, but it was an expensive, really nice facility. And it was MTSU, Middle Tennessee State University. Yeah. So I took a look at that. And I thought, that really sounds cool. I mean, they've got this amazing facility, amazing equipment and studios, and a great opportunity. And then I also just happened to notice that if you had in-state tuition at MTSU, it was only $700 a semester for all full ride, 21 credit hours. So I said, well, that sounds pretty good, And I moved down. I was living in Boston. That's where I'm from. After we moved from New York at 6, we moved up to Boston and New England, and that's where I was for the rest of my growing up. I got in my car, drove down to Nashville. Didn't know a thing about Nashville. Had never been to the South. Didn't know anything about music. At that point, I didn't even know that New York, L.A., and Nashville were, the music cities.
Big cities for
like a good option. I just knew there was a school here. In my mind, the best place to be for music was St. Louis, where all my friends still were, in my bands. And so I came down here, I actually lived in Nashville for a year and got a job as the salad bar guy in the Palmer Plaza building over at the 21st and West End split. And then became a resident because I was here for a year, and then got the residency tuition from TSU and
nice
went there, and then just stayed. I've stayed in Nashville ever since 1991.
Awesome.
Let me give you the milestone for my move down here. 1991 was, for me, is marked by driving around in my crappy little Ford Escort station wagon and listening to WRVU, which is Vanderbilt's radio station, which is unfortunately, I think it's there on the internet, but it's not there on the airwaves anymore. And they were breaking "Smells Like Teen Spirit" for Nirvana. So I was driving around listening to that, and that's, that marked the beginning of my stay in Nashville.
Yeah.
Does that mean anything to you guys?
That's a great milestone.
"Smells Like Teen Spirit" and Nirvana?
Absolutely.
Is that still meaningful? Okay, good.
Oh, do we want to kind of hold on to audience questions until the end, or?
Is this the end?
No. Let's grab your question. What's up?
I was just wondering, how exposed were you to audio engineering or to the whole recording process when you first started? Did you have prior experience? Were you totally oblivious to it? What was your approach to it?
All right. In all fairness, I had been exposed to it and I had some experience, though I didn't really know it. So, for example, when I was in high school, we had a teacher that came there from Berkeley and started teaching in the music program, and he took a closet and converted it into a 4-track studio and an electronic music lab. So he was teaching that in my high school, and I got to take that class and learn how to use a 4-track recorder, it was a cassette. I think it was the Yamaha that has the split unit with the mixing faders on it and the cassette deck up here. Super cool, and then they had some synths in there, and they had early samplers. So again, I got exposed to it there and was able to play around with it a little bit. And then when I was in high school, I guess later, or maybe when I was in college, I bought my first 4-track. And so I was playing around with that in college. And I moved in freshman year. I remember I went for architecture, but I was playing guitar and having a lot of fun doing that. And I was walking downstairs, and there were some, I walked into this dorm room, and there were these other guys there that were playing cool music, and they had been recording songs in their dorm room, multi-tracking songs, but they didn't have a 4-track recorder. They just had a dual cassette player with the mic input. So what they would do is they would record onto one cassette. They would record their first idea, lay it down, and then you just flip the cassettes like that, and you plug in the mic, so it would blend the microphone and what was playing off the first cassette onto the second one, and now you'd overdub, you'd record your mic and what was on the other cassette, and then you'd flip it again. So whatever you recorded first was just like a ghostly memory by the time you finished the song, as far as the cassette goes. But those guys were doing that. That got me really, I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. I'd never met anybody who made a song before. I might have played violin at 4, before you were playing at 8, but I think you were actually making music long before I was.
Well, I'm kind of curious. Does like the story about the 4-track, is that reminiscent at all of like how you got turned on to production? What was?
I had a 4-track.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was
Okay.
it a Tascam?
Yeah.
Whatever the little 4-track of the time. This would have been in 1980 or 82 or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I played a bunch of instruments, so I would just, I would wear that thing out.
Yeah.
Like 15, 20, just keep stacking
Just
things.
tons of overdubs.
Yeah.
Do you remember if you could punch in on a 4-track, or was it just like you just played top to bottom of the song?
Yeah, I don't, maybe you could, but I don't think it was probably crude.
Yeah.
It's like a big old switch, So
right in the middle of the song.
So I think you just kind of start at the top, and then you just keep bouncing those tracks down to, and it's same thing. The more you added, the quality just went down.
Right.
It was great.
But the coolness went way up.
Yeah,
coolness factor
man,
goes
it
up.
sounded-
Cool
it
factor
sounded
went
cool. I
s-
wish I still had those tapes, and maybe
Yeah.
my mom might still have them.
They're lying around at home somewhere.
Yeah, and just to see what was I doing. But yeah,
That'd
was
be cool to hear.
I was fascinated. I'd spend days on
Yeah.
days doing that.
Yeah, that was fun. It was a lot of fun to mess around with that,
So cool.
and then when you were done, you'd bounce from your 4-track down to another cassette player, recorder,
Well, so you could take it in the,
and then you go listen to it in the
goes to
only
your
place
friend's house,
that was meaningful, which is in the car.
yeah,
You go
so-
jam that in the car. We called it the car jam.
We had an 8-track too at the time, so this was
Yeah.
we
Oh,
were
nice.
we were kind of hi-fi,
Well, my college at Washington University in St. Louis, they actually had a synth studio. They had, as part of the music building, they had a recording studio with a giant synthesizer called Throd that the teacher had built. It was
Oh, wow.
huge. It was taller than me, kind of thing. It was
Nice.
bright orange.
Yeah.
But they had an 8-track there too, and so again, I took the recording class when I was in college. And they actually introduced me to tape and understanding about, the record, erase, record, play heads, and the gap, the time delay between one head and the other, and how to overdub, and how to do use the sync buttons on the machine and that sort of thing. And again, I was introduced to that, and I loved it, and it was really exciting. But I had no idea that it was a choice that I could make to do that for a living. Meanwhile,
Right.
I plodded along in architecture. So by the time I came down to Nashville to start recording school, I had actually already had a lot of experience
Right.
recording things on 4-tracks in a studio. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I don't know if you experienced this. In my experience as a 4-track owner, the thing that made me stand out as like the engineer was the fact that I could figure out how to hook up all the different Radio Shack adapters that you would need in order to get a sound into the 4-track. And that was the required skill.
That's what engineering was.
Yeah, it was like, well, I've got this one gray cable that goes from this thing to that thing. So
what was the point what was the shift from the 4-track to producing, like working on records? You came down and you were doing studio music. You were playing on a lot of records.
For me, I was working with a girl named Claire Burson, and she we played together, and I helped her arrange the songs, and it was time for her to make a record, and she said, help me produce it, and that was my first
Cool.
For real.
Right.
Yeah, so we went. There's Universal Studios. Does this still exist? They still have a studio there. It's
Not
on
sure.
Music Row. Great studio, but I was totally green with that sort of thing,
Mm-hmm.
So we spent 3 or 4 days. It was a cool process.
Yeah.
We recorded on radar, so there was and we didn't do any. It was like no edits, no automation. It was all, faders up, and it's like, that sounds good, and then print it.
Yeah.
So that was and it still sounds really good.
We're
I'm still proud of it.
some of our classes are still using radar.
Okay.
So these guys and
You guys, yeah.
myself, I know that process a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Radar is really cool.
I think
Yeah.
it sounds really good. Still.
One of the great votes of confidence I heard somebody describing Radar was Daniel Lanois.
Yeah.
He was talking about how he was always notorious for using tape, and then he said he discovered Radar, and it was the first time he heard digital sound as good as tape to his ear, And then he said it was so cool because he could take it down. He was also talking about going down to Mexico to record and taking the Radar system with him to do a portable studio because he likes to set up studios in buildings, in a house where he's going to record, make a record. And that, and I remember the other detail he said about Mexico is that there wasn't as much RF, so all the guitar pickups didn't have buzzes in them where they were. They were out in the desert or something
Wow.
like that,
Interesting.
Just sounded
That's
nice
crazy.
and clean.
Cool. So that kind of grew from somebody that you played with. You had a right relationship already built, and the trust was there. How did that grow? Did you start to get other people approaching you for producing, or?
Yeah, from that, it was word of mouth. Folks would hear that, and that's been how it's. What year? I don't even know what year that was.
The good year.
It was a good year. Yeah, but it was just kind of a slow process, but as people would hear that, I'd get approached, and then each record, more folks keep coming.
Right.
Yeah,
That's great. And you perform on a lot of the records that you also
I
produce
do.
and co-produce.
I
right?
think all of them at this point. And sometimes I ask, or I say I don't have to play.
Right.
And that's usually part of it, though. I think part of hiring me as a producer is also wanting me to play.
Right.
So